The massive alien ship floated in the darkness of space, its crystal walls glowing with a cold blue light. Inside the main hall, 12 different alien species sat around a circular table that stretched for hundreds of feet. The air smelled of strange chemicals and metal. These were the leaders of the Zephyrian hegemony, and they had been conquering worlds for 300 years. Commander Vexithara stood up from her chair. Her body looked like it was made of living crystal, and when she moved, tiny lights flickered under her skin. She was from the Quillian race, one of the smartest species in the galaxy. In her forehands, she held a glowing data pad that showed pictures and numbers about their next target. "Fellow commanders," she said, her voice sounding like wind chimes in a storm. "Today, we discuss our next conquest, the third planet in the Sol system. The locals call it Earth." A hologram appeared above the table, showing a blue and green planet, spinning slowly. White clouds moved across its surface, and 2 small moons circled around it. The alien leaders leaned forward to get a better look. "What do we know about these creatures?" asked General Korth, a being that looked like a giant lizard with 6 arms. His scales were dark green, and his yellow eyes never blinked. Vexithara touched her datapad, and the hologram changed to show pictures of humans. The aliens saw men and women walking in cities, working in fields, and flying in primitive aircraft. Some of the alien leaders made sounds that might have been laughter. "They call themselves humans," Vexithara explained. "They have only recently learned to fly between their planet and its moon. Their weapons are simple projectile systems that fire metal bullets. Their planet is divided into nearly 200 separate nations that often fight each other." Admiral Zekmore, who looked like a massive jellyfish with tentacles that glowed purple, floated closer to the hologram. "How many of them are there?" he asked. "Nearly 8 billion, Vexithara replied. "But they have no unity, no central government, no space fleet worthy of the name. They should surrender within hours of our arrival." The alien leaders looked at each other and made various sounds of agreement. This was exactly what they wanted to hear. Over the past 3 centuries, they had conquered 42 worlds using the same simple plan: arrive with overwhelming force, demand surrender, and take what they wanted. It had never failed. Far away, on Earth's moon, Lieutenant Colonel Jake Morrison sat in a small room filled with computer screens and blinking lights. The Luna monitoring station was humanity's most advanced outpost, designed to watch for asteroids and study space. Jake was a tall man with short brown hair and tired eyes. He had been working at the station for 2 years, and most days were boring, but today was different. "Jake, you need to see this," called Lisa Park from across the room. She was a communications specialist, a young woman with black hair tied back in a ponytail. Her fingers moved quickly across her keyboard as numbers and graphs appeared on her screen. Jake walked over and looked at the display. Strange energy readings were coming from the edge of the solar system. The patterns were unlike anything they had ever seen before. "How many contacts?" Jake asked. "I count at least 300 separate signals," Lisa said, her voice worried. "They're big, Jake, really big, and they're all moving toward Earth." Ryan Bell, their tactical analyst, looked up from his own computer. He was a young man with red hair and freckles who usually made jokes to keep everyone calm, but he wasn't joking now. "The energy signatures suggest massive ships," he said. "Much larger than anything we've ever built." Jake felt his stomach drop. He had served in the military for 15 years and had seen many dangerous situations, but this was different. This was the moment every human had wondered about, but hoped would never come. First contact with aliens, and they were coming in warships. "Send everything to Earth Command," Jake ordered. "Priority 1 emergency broadcast." Back on Earth, in a laboratory at the University of California, Dr. Amy Foster was working late. She was a xenobiologist, a scientist who studied the possibility of alien life. For 10 years, she had been developing protocols for first contact with alien species. She was a woman in her 40s with gray streaks in her brown hair and intelligent green eyes. Her computer beeped with an incoming message. When she read it, she nearly dropped her coffee cup. The message was from Luna Station, and it contained energy readings that could only mean one thing. Ships were approaching Earth from deep space. Amy quickly called her colleague, Dr. Sam Carter. Sam was a physicist who had worked with her on the first contact protocols. He was a thin man with a beard who wore thick glasses and always seemed to be thinking about complex equations. "Sam, you need to see this data," Amy said when he answered his phone. "I think they're here." Within hours, the data from Luna Station had reached government leaders around the world. In Washington, D.C., President Helen Ross called an emergency meeting. She was a woman in her 50s who had been president for 2 years. She had dealt with wars, natural disasters, and economic problems, but nothing had prepared her for this. General Pete Jackson, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, studied the data with growing concern. He was a career military man who had served in conflicts around the world. He knew about warfare and strategy, but fighting aliens was beyond anything in the military handbooks. "Madam President," the general said, "we need to prepare for the worst. If these are hostile aliens, our current weapons may not be effective against their technology." Secretary of State Maria Gonzalez, a diplomatic woman who preferred talking to fighting, raised her hand. "Perhaps we should try to communicate with them first. We don't know their intentions." Meanwhile, the hegemony fleet continued its approach toward Earth. Admiral Zekmore commanded 300 warships, each one capable of destroying entire cities. His flagship was 10 miles long and carried enough firepower to crack a planet's crust. He had used similar fleets to conquer dozens of worlds, and he expected Earth to be just as easy. In his command center, Admiral Zekmore looked at tactical displays showing Earth's primitive defenses. Their most powerful weapons were nuclear missiles that could barely reach their own moon. Their space fleet consisted of a few small research vessels and cargo ships. It would be like fighting children with toys. "Begin final approach," the admiral commanded. "Standard conquest formation. We'll be in position to deliver the ultimatum in 72 hours. On Earth, Jake Morrison watched the alien fleet grow larger on his sensors. Each ship was the size of a city, and there were hundreds of them. Humanity was about to face the greatest challenge in its history, and they had no idea what was coming. The storm was gathering, and Earth stood directly in its path. The alien fleet appeared at the edge of Earth's solar system like dark clouds blocking out the stars. 300 massive warships dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming with weapons that could destroy entire continents. The largest ship was Admiral Zekmore's flagship, a monster of metal and crystal that stretched for 10 miles. On the bridge of his flagship, Admiral Zekmore floated in his command pod, his purple tentacles dancing with satisfaction. Through the huge windows, he could see the small blue planet that would soon belong to the hegemony. Earth looked so peaceful and defenseless, spinning in the darkness of space. "Open communications to the planet," Admiral Zekmore ordered. His voice was deep and wet, like sounds coming from the bottom of an ocean. "Broadcast on all frequencies. Use the standard ultimatum format." A technician, who looked like a giant spider made of silver metal, worked at the communication controls. Within seconds, every radio, television, and computer on Earth received the same message. The alien voice was cold and without emotion. "People of Earth, you are now in the territory of the Zephyrian hegemony. Your planet has been selected for integration into our empire. You have exactly 72 hours to surrender unconditionally. All weapons must be destroyed. All governments must submit to hegemony authority. Any resistance will result in the complete destruction of your civilization. This is your only warning." The message repeated in dozens of languages, each translation perfect and terrifying. In Washington, D.C., President Helen Ross sat in the Situation Room deep under the White House. Around the long table sat the most powerful people in America, but they all looked small and frightened. The alien message had been playing for an hour, and nobody knew what to do. "Options," President Ross said, trying to keep her voice steady. She was a strong woman who had faced many crises, but nothing like this. "I need options." General Pete Jackson spread photographs across the table. The pictures showed the alien fleet from telescopes around the world. Each ship was larger than the biggest aircraft carrier, and there were hundreds of them. "Madam President," The general said, "Their smallest ships have more firepower than our entire nuclear arsenal. If we fight them with conventional weapons, we will lose in minutes." Secretary of State Maria Gonzalez leaned forward. She was a woman who believed in solving problems with words instead of weapons. "We must try to communicate with them. Perhaps we can negotiate. Maybe they want something we can give them without surrendering our freedom." "They want everything," General Jackson replied grimly. Their message was clear: total surrender or total destruction. On Luna Station, Jake Morrison and his team were humanity's main link to the alien fleet. The small monitoring station had become the most important place in the solar system. Jake stood in front of multiple screens showing the approaching warships, each one larger than a city. Lisa Park worked frantically at her computer, trying to establish better communication with the aliens. Her fingers flew across the keyboard as she adjusted frequencies and translation programs. "I think I can create a direct link," she said. "We might be able to talk to them ship to ship." Ryan Bell studied the alien fleet formation on his tactical display. His job was to analyze enemy movements, but this was beyond anything he had studied in military school. "Jake, look at this," he said, pointing to his screen. "They're not just pointing weapons at Earth. They're surrounding the entire planet. No escape routes." Jake felt cold fear in his stomach. These aliens had done this before. Everything about their formation and timing showed careful planning and experience. Earth was not their first conquest. At the University of California, Dr. Amy Foster received a call that changed her life. The government wanted her to lead Earth's first diplomatic contact with the aliens. She was the world's leading expert on xenobiology, and her protocols for alien contact were the only plans anyone had. Amy quickly drove to a secure government facility, where they had set up a direct communication link with the alien fleet. The room was full of computers, translators, and military officers. Everyone looked at her like she could somehow save the world with the right words. "Dr. Foster," a military officer said, "you have a direct line to their command ship. What do you want to say?" Amy took a deep breath. She had dreamed about this moment for years, but not like this. Not with weapons pointed at her planet. "Open the channel," she said. The screen flickered, and suddenly Amy was looking at Commander Vexithera. The alien's crystal body glowed with cold light, and her forearms moved like she was conducting invisible music. When she spoke, her voice sounded like breaking glass. "I am Commander Vexithera of the Quillian race. You are speaking for your species? I am Dr. Amy Foster. I represent Earth's scientific community. We wish to discuss peaceful solutions to this situation." Commander Vexithara made a sound that might have been laughter. "There is only one solution. Surrender. Your species is primitive and divided. You have no choice." Amy felt anger rising in her chest. "We are not as primitive as you think. We have survived ice ages, diseases, and wars. We are stronger than we appear." "You are the 43rd species to make such claims," Vexithara replied. "You will surrender like all the others, or you will be destroyed like all the others." The communication ended, leaving Amy staring at a blank screen. The aliens had no interest in negotiation. They saw humans as just another weak species to be conquered. On the flagship, Commander Vexithara studied the data from her conversation with the human scientist. Something bothered her about the humans' responses, but she could not identify what it was. Their psychological scanning equipment showed unusual patterns in human brain activity. "Admiral," she reported to Zekmor, "the humans are responding differently than expected. Their fear levels are normal, but their aggression indicators are extremely high, and they show no submission patterns at all." Admiral Zekmor dismissed her concerns with a wave of his tentacles. "Every species shows some aggression when first contacted. It means nothing. Continue the countdown." In space above Earth, Captain Roy Adams commanded humanity's most advanced warship, the ECS Freedom. It was barely the size of a lifeboat compared to the alien vessels, but it was all Earth had. His crew of 50 humans prepared their weapons, knowing they were about to face impossible odds. Nicole Wright, his weapons officer, checked their missile systems one last time. "Captain, We have 12 nuclear torpedoes and conventional weapons against 300 alien ships. Tony Martinez, the chief engineer, spoke from the engine room over the intercom. Captain, I've modified our engines for ramming speed. If we're going down, we can take one of them with us. Captain Adams looked out at the alien fleet and felt something the aliens had never encountered before. It was not fear or desperation. It was the calm determination of a species that had never learned how to quit. All stations, prepare for battle, he ordered. We may not win, but we're going to show them what humans are made of. The 72-hour countdown continued, but neither side truly understood what they were facing. The aliens expected quick surrender from another primitive species. The humans prepared to fight against impossible odds. But something was already changing. In the depths of space, other civilizations were intercepting human communications. For the first time in 3 centuries, they were hearing a species that refused to surrender before the battle even began. The countdown continued, but the real war had already started in ways no one expected. 24 hours remained until the alien deadline. In the White House, President Helen Ross made a decision that would change the galaxy forever. She sat at her desk in the Oval Office, looking at reports from around the world. Every nation was preparing for war, but they all knew it was hopeless. Madam President, General Pete Jackson said, entering the room with Dr. Amy Foster, we have a proposal. It's not what you might expect. President Ross looked up from the reports. General, our military advisors say we have no chance against their technology. What could we possibly do that would make a difference? Dr. Amy Foster stepped forward. She looked tired but determined. Madam President, we want to broadcast a message to the entire galaxy. Not just to the aliens threatening us, but to every civilization out there. What kind of message, Ming? The President asked. A warning, Amy replied. We want to tell them exactly who they're dealing with. We want to explain what humans really are. President Ross frowned. Dr. Foster, we need to show them we're peaceful. We need to prove we're not a threat. Amy shook her head. No, Madam President, that's exactly wrong. We need to show them that we are the biggest threat they've ever encountered, not because of our weapons, but because of who we are. General, Jackson nodded. The idea is to make them understand that conquering Earth would be the worst mistake they could make. Not because we're strong enough to stop them, but because we're too dangerous to let loose in the galaxy. President Ross was quiet for a long moment. It was a crazy plan, but everything else was hopeless. Do it, she said finally. Send your warning. Within hours, every communication dish on Earth was pointed at the stars. Radio telescopes, satellite networks, and deep space transmitters all focused on sending one message to the galaxy. Dr. Amy Foster stood in a broadcasting center surrounded by hundreds of technicians and military officers. On Luna Station, Jake Morrison coordinated the broadcast with Lisa Park and Ryan Bell. Their equipment was boosted to maximum power, ensuring the message would reach every corner of known space. Are we ready? Amy asked into her microphone. All systems green, Lisa Park reported from Luna. You're broadcasting to the entire galaxy, Dr. Foster. Amy looked directly into the camera. She knew that aliens across the galaxy would see this message, including species that had been conquered by the hegemony. Her words needed to be perfect. To all civilizations listening, Amy began, her voice calm and clear. This is Dr. Amy Foster speaking for the human species of Earth. We know you think you understand us. You think we're just another primitive species that will surrender when faced with superior technology. You are wrong. On the Hegemony flagship, Commander Vexithara watched the human broadcast with growing interest. Admiral Zekmore had ordered her to monitor all human communications, expecting desperate pleas for mercy. This was something different. You see us as backward because we still fight wars with chemical rockets and metal bullets, Amy continued. But you don't understand what that means. We are a species that has spent our entire existence learning how to kill. Every tool we've ever made, we've turned into a weapon. Every discovery we've made, we've used to become more dangerous. Across the galaxy, other civilizations began receiving the human broadcast. On worlds conquered by the hegemony, enslaved species listened with growing amazement. On neutral worlds, alien leaders gathered around their communication systems. We survived when 90% of all life on our planet died, Amy said. We survived ice ages that lasted for thousands of years. We survived diseases that killed millions of us, and we came back stronger. We survived asteroid impacts, supervolcanic eruptions, and nuclear wars. We don't just survive disasters, we learn from them. Ryan Bell had prepared detailed data to support Amy's words. As she spoke, images appeared on the broadcast showing human history. Pictures of ancient battles, world wars, and weapons of mass destruction. The aliens watching saw a species that had turned warfare into an art form. You think your technology makes you superior, Amy continued. But technology is just tools. We are the species that split the atom not for energy, but to make bombs. We are the species that went to space not for exploration, but to build weapons platforms. Everything we touch becomes deadlier. On the Corallian homeworld, Ambassador Thylana watched the human broadcast with fascination. The Corallians had fought the hegemony for centuries and understood warfare better than most species. What she saw in the human message was something the galaxy had never encountered before. We've been preparing for you our entire history, Amy said, her voice growing stronger. Every war we've fought has been practice. Every weapon we've built has been a stepping stone to something more destructive. You think you're conquering a primitive world, but you're about to release the most dangerous predator the galaxy has ever seen. Commander Vexithara studied the psychological readings from the human broadcast. The data was disturbing. Every human on Earth showed the same pattern. They were not afraid of dying. They were excited about the possibility of fighting an enemy, worthy of their full attention. Look at our history, Amy continued. We are the species that invented chemical weapons, biological warfare, and nuclear bombs. We are the species that created napalm, cluster bombs, and weapons designed to cause maximum suffering. We did this to each other. Imagine what we'll do to you. The broadcast showed more images. Human soldiers in trenches, cities destroyed by bombing, the mushroom clouds of nuclear explosions. But instead of showing weakness, the images demonstrated humanity's incredible capacity for organized violence and destruction. But here's what you really need to understand, Amy said, her voice now carrying across the galaxy with deadly certainty. We have never encountered a problem we couldn't solve. Never encountered an enemy we couldn't defeat. Never faced extinction without finding a way to survive and come back stronger. On dozens of conquered worlds, enslaved species began to stir. The human broadcast was having an effect the hegemony had never anticipated. Instead of showing submission, a primitive species was warning their conquerors. You can destroy our cities and kill billions of us, Amy continued, but you cannot kill all of us. And the ones who survive will spend the rest of their lives learning everything about you. We'll study your technology, infiltrate your worlds, and turn your own weapons against you. We'll teach every oppressed species in the galaxy how to fight, like humans. Admiral Zekmor finally understood what he was hearing. This was not a surrender or a plea for mercy. This was a promise of endless war from a species that had perfected the art of never giving up. We are the species that made peace, through the threat of mutual destruction, Amy said. We held weapons capable of ending all life on our planet, and we pointed them at each other for decades. We lived with the constant possibility of extinction and called it normal. The broadcast continued for another hour, with detailed explanations of human military history, survival strategies, and the psychology of a species that refused to accept defeat. When it ended, the galaxy was silent. On the Hegemony flagship, Commander Vexithera presented her analysis to Admiral Zekmor. The psychological profiles were unlike anything they had ever encountered. Humans showed no submission patterns, no fear of extinction, and an eagerness for conflict that bordered on insanity by galactic standards. Admiral, she said, her crystal body flickering with uncertainty, I recommend we reconsider our approach to this species. Admiral Zekmor stared at the small blue planet that had just threatened the entire galaxy. For the first time in 3 centuries of conquest, he was not sure what to do next. The warning had been heard across the galaxy and everything had changed. The human broadcast spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. Within hours, every major civilization had received the message. The response was unlike anything the galaxy had seen in centuries. On the planet Coralia, Ambassador Thilana stood before the High Council in their crystal palace. She was a tall, elegant being with silver skin and 4 graceful arms. The Corallians had fought the hegemony for over 100 years, but had never won a major victory. "Honored Council," Thilana said, her voice ringing through the great hall, "we have just witnessed something extraordinary. A primitive species has done what we never thought to do. They have turned their weakness into a weapon." The council members looked at each other with confusion. Elder Mekthar, oldest of the Corallians, spoke with a voice like wind through metal. "Explain, Ambassador. How can weakness become strength?" Thilana activated a holographic display showing Earth's broadcast. They did not hide their violent nature, they celebrated it. They told the galaxy exactly what kind of species they are, and they made it sound terrifying. On the screen, images of human wars played again. The council watched, in fascination as primitive humans fought with incredible determination and creativity. They saw weapons designed not just to kill but to spread fear and suffering. "Look at their faces." Thilana pointed to human soldiers in the images. "They are not afraid, they are excited. This is a species that finds joy in conflict." Meanwhile, on the conquered world of Senna Prime, the enslaved Talix people gathered in secret to listen to recordings of the human broadcast. For 50 years they had lived under hegemony rule, forced to mine crystals for alien weapons. Kevandra, a Talax resistance leader, played the human message for her followers in an underground cave. The Talax looked like large, furry bears, with intelligent eyes and strong hands made for working with tools. "Listen to this part," Kevandra said, replaying Amy Foster's words about never giving up. "They say they have never met a problem they could not solve, never met an enemy they could not defeat." An old Talax named Morgan shook his massive head. "But we tried to resist. The hegemony crushed us in weeks." "Because we fought like civilized beings," Kevandra replied. "We followed rules of war. We tried to protect our civilians. These humans say they turn everything into a weapon, even their own people." Back in the Sol system, the hegemony fleet remained motionless. For 12 hours, Admiral Zekmor had not given any orders. His command staff waited nervously as their leader studied reports from across the galaxy. Commander Vexithara entered the Admiral's chamber with new data. Her crystal body was flickering more rapidly than usual, a sign of stress among her people. "Admiral, we are receiving communications from the High Council," she reported. "They want detailed analysis of the human threat level." Admiral Zekmor turned his massive form toward her. His tentacles moved slowly, showing deep thought. "What is your assessment, Commander?" "Sir, the humans are exhibiting psychological patterns we have never encountered. They show no fear of death, no submission instincts, and complete willingness to sacrifice everything for victory. But more troubling, their broadcast is causing unrest among conquered populations." Vexithara showed him reports from across hegemony space. On 17 different worlds, enslaved species were organizing resistance movements. They were calling it the human example. On Earth, military leaders were preparing for the impossible. In underground bunkers around the world, humans worked frantically to turn everything they could into weapons. General Pete Jackson stood in the Pentagon's war room, surrounded by maps and computer screens. Officers from every nation worked together, sharing technology and strategies that had been military secrets just days before. "Status report," the general ordered. Colonel Nancy Brooks, in charge of space defenses, spoke first. "Sir, we've converted 47 civilian ships into attack vessels. Cargo haulers, passenger liners, even space tugs, all carrying nuclear charges. Major Kevin Foster, no relation to Dr. Amy Foster, reported on ground preparations. Every major city now has underground weapon factories. We're teaching civilians how to make explosives from household chemicals." Captain Roy Adams appeared on a video screen from his ship near Luna. Behind him, Nicole Wright and Tony Martinez worked at their stations. "General," Captain Adams reported, "my ship is ready for kamikaze attack. We've programmed our navigation to target their command vessel. If we're going down, we're taking some of them with us. General Jackson nodded grimly. Good work, Captain. Remember, our job is not to win. Our job is to make them pay such a high price that they regret ever coming here. On Luna Station, Jake Morrison received an unexpected message. It was not from Earth or the alien fleet. It was from somewhere else in the galaxy. Jake, you need to see this, Lisa Park called out, her voice excited for the first time in days. The message was from the Corallian Empire. Ambassador Thylana's face appeared on their screen, speaking in perfect English. Greetings, humans of Earth. I am Ambassador Thylana of the Corallian Empire. Your broadcast has reached us, and we are impressed. We wish to offer an alliance. Jake could hardly believe what he was hearing. Put me through to Earth Command immediately, he told Lisa. Within an hour, President Helen Ross was speaking directly with alien representatives who wanted to help Earth. But Thylana's message came with a warning. President Ross, the Corallian ambassador, said, "What your species has done is remarkable but dangerous. You have convinced the galaxy that humans are a threat. Some civilizations will want to help you. Others will want to destroy you before you can spread your influence." Dr. Sam Carter, who had been working with Amy Foster on the broadcast, joined the conversation from his laboratory. Ambassador, what exactly did our message accomplish? Dr. Carter, your species has created what we call a reputation weapon. You have made yourselves too dangerous to conquer and too valuable to destroy, but you have also made enemies among species who see humans as a threat to galactic order. The conversation was interrupted by alarms. Ryan Bell's voice came over the intercom from Luna Station. All stations, the alien fleet is moving. But they're not advancing toward Earth. They're pulling back. On the Hegemony flagship, Admiral Zekmore had finally made his decision. He called his senior officers to the command center. "We are withdrawing to a safe distance," he announced. "I am requesting guidance from the High Council before proceeding with this conquest." Commander Vexithara was shocked. "Sir, we have never withdrawn from a primitive species before." "This is not a primitive species," the Admiral replied. "This is something the galaxy has never seen, a civilization that uses its own savagery as a diplomatic tool." The alien fleet began moving away from Earth, but they did not leave the solar system. They took up positions near Jupiter, close enough to attack but far enough to avoid any human surprise attacks. Across the galaxy, the effects of humanity's warning continued to spread. On the Hegemony capital world, emergency sessions were called. In neutral space, civilizations began choosing sides. On conquered worlds, resistance movements grew stronger. Dr. Amy Foster received hundreds of messages from alien species across the galaxy. Some offered support. Others demanded that Earth be destroyed before humans could spread their infection of endless warfare to other worlds. "We've accomplished something," Amy told President Ross in their next meeting. "But I'm not sure if it's good or bad." President Ross looked at reports showing the alien fleet's new position. "Dr. Foster, for the first time since this crisis began, we're not facing immediate extinction. That has to count for something." But both women knew that. Humanity had crossed a line. They had announced to the galaxy that Earth was home to the most dangerous predators in known space. Now they had to live up to that reputation, or face the consequences of making empty threats. The 72-hour deadline had passed, but the real test was just beginning. Humanity had warned the galaxy about what they were capable of. Now the galaxy was deciding what to do about it. On the Hegemony capital world of Zephyr Prime, the High Council met in emergency session. The massive chamber was filled with representatives from all 12 member species. For 300 years, they had ruled the galaxy through fear and superior technology. Now a primitive planet had challenged everything they believed. Supreme Chancellor Velkoth, leader of the Hegemony, stood at the center of the chamber. He was an ancient being who looked like a walking tree made of metal and crystal. His voice boomed through the hall like thunder. "Council members," he began, "we face an unprecedented situation. The humans of Earth have created something we have never encountered. They have weaponized their own reputation." Commander Vexithara stood before the council to present her final report. Her crystal body flickered with nervous energy as she spoke to the most powerful beings in the galaxy. Honored Council, after extensive analysis, I must recommend we abandon the conquest of Earth. The humans represent a unique threat to galactic stability. A murmur of shock ran through the chamber. General Korth, the lizard-like military leader, rose from his seat. Commander, we have 300 warships. They have a few primitive vessels. How can they threaten us? Vex Thera activated a holographic display showing data from across hegemony space. General, since their broadcast, we have recorded uprising attempts on 43 conquered worlds. Enslaved species are using human tactics and philosophy. They are no longer afraid to die fighting us. The display showed images from rebellions across the galaxy. On Talax Prime, the bear-like Talax people had destroyed 3 mining facilities using human-inspired guerrilla tactics. On other worlds, enslaved species were building weapons from industrial equipment just as humans had threatened to do. More troubling, Vex Thera continued, is the psychological profile of the humans themselves. They show patterns we have never seen. They do not fear extinction. They welcome it as an opportunity to prove their strength. Supreme Chancellor Velkoth studied the data with growing concern. The hegemony's power came from their ability to conquer quickly and efficiently. If every species began fighting like humans, the empire would collapse under the cost of constant warfare. On Earth, President Helen Ross addressed the United Nations for what might be the last time. Representatives from every nation gathered in New York, knowing that their decisions would affect all humanity. Fellow leaders, President Ross said, we have received word that the alien fleet is not advancing. Our warning appears to be working. But we must be prepared for any outcome. General Pete Jackson presented the final military preparations. Madam President, every major city is now a fortress. Every factory is producing weapons. We have turned our entire civilization into a war machine. Dr. Amy Foster stood to address the assembly. She looked tired but determined. President Ross, we have also received over 300 communication requests from alien civilizations. Some want to join us as allies. Others want to destroy us before we can influence their enemies. The irony was clear to everyone in the room. By warning the galaxy about human nature, Earth had become both the most feared and most sought-after ally in known space. On Luna Station, Jake Morrison watched the alien fleet through his instruments. For 5 days, the massive ships had remained motionless near Jupiter. Lisa Park and Ryan Bell worked constantly to monitor alien communications and watch for any sign of attack. Jake, Lisa called out, I'm picking up a new transmission from the alien fleet. It's directed at Earth governments. The message came from Admiral Zekmor himself. His massive form appeared on screens around the world, his purple tentacles moving slowly as he spoke. People of Earth, the Admiral said, the Hegemony High Council has reached a decision regarding your world. President Ross and her advisors watched from the White House. Around the globe, billions of humans held their breath. Your species has demonstrated capabilities that make conquest inadvisable, Admiral Zekmor continued. The hegemony hereby declares Earth a protected world under galactic law. You will not be conquered or enslaved. Cheers erupted in government buildings around the world, but Admiral Zekmor was not finished. However, he said, his voice growing colder, this protection comes with conditions. Humanity will remain confined to your solar system. Any attempt to expand beyond your current territory will be met with total destruction. The celebration stopped immediately. Earth had won their freedom, but at the cost of being trapped in their own star system. Dr. Amy Foster requested permission to respond to the alien admiral. Within hours, she was speaking directly to the hegemony fleet. Admiral Zekmor, she said, your offer is unacceptable. You cannot imprison an entire species because you fear what we might become. The admiral's image flickered with what might have been amusement. Dr. Foster, your species has spent considerable effort convincing the galaxy that humans are dangerous. You cannot now claim to be harmless. We never claimed to be harmless, Amy replied. We claim to be unstoppable, and that includes stopping anyone who tries to cage us. This exchange was broadcast across the galaxy, and the response was immediate. Ambassador Thylana of the Corallian Empire contacted Earth with a counterproposal. President Ross, Thylana, said, "The Corallian Empire formally invites humanity to join our alliance. We will guarantee your right to expand and explore the galaxy in exchange for sharing your military knowledge and tactical expertise." Within hours, 12 other civilizations made similar offers. Species that had fought the hegemony for centuries suddenly saw hope in humanity's refusal to surrender. Supreme Chancellor Velkoth realized that the hegemony faced a crisis. If they tried to imprison humanity, they would face a galactic alliance led by the most dangerous warriors in known space. If they allowed humans to spread through the galaxy, their empire would face rebellions inspired by human philosophy. The Council made their final decision. Admiral Zekmor appeared on Earth's screens one last time. "The hegemony withdraws all claims to Earth and your solar system. You are free to join whatever alliances you choose. But know this, the galaxy will be watching to see if your actions match your words." The alien fleet began its departure, but not in defeat. They left with a new understanding of power. Sometimes the greatest weapon was not superior technology, but superior will. 6 months later, Dr. Sam Carter published his analysis of the crisis. He concluded that humanity had achieved something unique in galactic history. They had won a war by convincing their enemies that victory would cost more than defeat. Earth joined the Corallian Alliance and began sharing human military tactics with oppressed species across the galaxy. The hegemony found themselves facing rebellions that used human-inspired strategies of never giving up and turning everything into a weapon. Within 2 years, the 300-year hegemony empire began to crumble. Not because they were conquered, but because their subjects had learned from humanity that freedom was worth any sacrifice. Dr. Amy Foster received her final vindication when a message arrived from the far edge of the galaxy. A species facing invasion by unknown aliens requested human advisors. They did not want human soldiers or human weapons. They wanted to learn how to make their enemies believe that conquest would be more trouble than it was worth. Earth had found its place in the galaxy, not as conquerors or victims, but as the species that taught others how to turn their greatest weakness into their greatest strength. Humanity had become the galaxy's teachers of the one lesson that mattered most: how to refuse to surrender, no matter what the odds. The warning had become humanity's greatest weapon, and the galaxy would never be the same.